Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The trial over the Eagle S tanker whose dragging anchor damaged undersea power and communications cables in the Gulf of Finland on Christmas Day 2024 has now begun in Helsinki. The captain insists the incident was a maritime accident, while Finnish prosecutors pursue serious charges, including sabotage and telecommunications interference. The case raises complex questions about maritime safety, jurisdiction, and potential geopolitical implications. Joining us now to unpack these issues is Teivo Teivainen, professor of world politics at the University of Helsinki. Good to see you again. Welcome back to TVP World.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Now, Teivo, let's begin with a bit of a recap here. How damaging has the effect been here physically on those cables, the S-Link 1 and 2? How damaging has that been overall for regional energy and also for the implications security-wise?
Of course, the damage was substantial, and it showed how one single vessel can do significant damage, where the exact measurements are still debated a little bit, but it's clear that apart from the economic impact, there's a security impact. It's kind of Achilles heel of European security. Also, these underwater cables that are very vulnerable and poorly protected. So rather than the focus on the exact impact of this particular cable, the trial and the political discussion around it is really about the future and how to create legal precedents to prevent this from happening to the extent possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is still ongoing. Now, the captain claims this was an accident. In your professional opinion, how credible is that, seeing as this was dragged, the anchor was dragged for 90, kilometers here before it stopped?
Well, here also, as the court case just started, jumping into conclusions is complicated. There might be evidence about the details and impact coming out, but it seems unlikely. The captain is claiming he didn't take notice, but what I've read, it seems unlikely that he could not have noted the fact that for such a long time there was an anchor dragging behind and creating all this damage. Mm-hmm. But let's see what the court determines.
Yeah.
There might have some detail I don't have here.
All right. And what about the idea of jurisdiction here? I mean, Finland is pushing this claim. What about its legal claim? I mean, this did happen in international waters for a large amount, but Finland is pushing this. Let's say, pardon the pun, how murky is this? On what mandate is this being pushed on? What does this mean for jurisdiction also for the future?
Yes, there was already debate about detention authority when the ship was moved, and seemingly it moved voluntarily from international waters to Finnish territorial waters. The prosecutor claims that it's not only about the location of the ship at the moment of the damage, but the real impact and effects of the damage. I think the jurisdictional dimension is something that the court is dealing with today. I assume that since it's gotten to the court, it has more or less been established that it's okay to handle it in Finnish courts. More generally, I think by pushing the limits of jurisdiction, Finnish authorities wanted to show that they don't just sit back while Russian shadow fleet is doing potentially damaging operations in our Baltic neighborhood. But it surely is an issue here, how to establish sovereignty, and this is more generally about maritime law in the world in many other places. To what extent can vessels that are clearly aimed at doing harm protect themselves by maintaining in international waters? So I think the case is followed more around the world, not only for the impact that it had on the Baltic.
And also, I think some things that people are criticizing here, or looking at least, is the Finnish Coast Guard's response during the incident itself. We're looking at a boarding party, around 60 to 70 armed personnel. Some were saying that breached safety and maritime protocols. How do we address that? And was this also, as you said earlier, was this a signal, a political signal as well, potentially, to those who want to take advantage of something like this in future?
Of course, it was a political signal and showing that Finland doesn't just sit back there. The jurisdictional limits there also about the detention, not only about the court case jurisdiction, are significant, I think. And it was a little bit unclear, and to some extent it still is, how those who boarded the vessel were able to convince the captain to move to Finnish territorial waters. The captain seems to be saying that he did it totally voluntarily. The wondering here is about why wouldn't he just not move into Finnish territorial waters and not be detained? So was it voluntary or not? I think one of the jurisdictional claims is about whether the vessel was forced to move from international waters to Finnish territorial waters. It seems a little bit murky in terms of jurisdictional claims, but I'm sure the court has had at least some relevant reasons for accepting jurisdiction in this case, and also about the detention, possible violation of international waters.
There's also reports allegedly linking the Eagle S to Russia's shadow fleet. I mean, the captain himself has denied this. How plausible is all this, and what does that mean in terms of who could be behind all of it?
Well, it kind of fits what we know about the so-called Russian shadow fleet that operates. There's always a degree of deniability that is sought there with murky ownership structures and all that. So it's Russians have made it difficult as possible it is for them to make it to sort of track particular vessels to Russia. But there are many indicators that this is very possibly and perhaps likely part of the Russian shadow fleet. I assume this is one of the aspects that will be brought up in the court case today that started today here in Helsinki. Also aging tankers, the history of this particular vessel, it all seems to fit within the Russian shadow fleet idea, but part of the idea is the deniability, and the Russians are obviously denying it.
And let's look at some scenarios here. Let's say, I mean, if the verdict then is that they are guilty, what could be the punishment here? And let's say if it is indeed ruled that through the evidence this was an accident, should the crew and the captain still be prosecuted for negligence or some kind of criminal charges here? What could be the possible outcomes?
I leave that to the court again. It's difficult to say how a court will deliberate on this issue. There's obviously the question of economic damage, and then there are questions about other kinds of criminal activity, whether it's seen as some kind of subversive act where it was an attack on national security or something like that, but this will come out from the court soon. It's also not known whether this is now the lowest court where it's handled, and sometimes court cases that are complicated like this may take a long time before we have the final verdict, if it goes up to higher levels of our court system here in Finland.
And it will certainly very much prove, whatever happens, I think, one of those precedents which other things will be marked and judged from in the future. So we'll be watching it with keen interest indeed. So we'll close it there. Thank you so much. That was our guest here today, Professor Teivo Teivainen. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks here on TVP World, but much more coming up, so don't go away. Goodbye.